all these beds might not stay planted 365 days a year. So in the cases where we don't have anything in a bed, we're transitioning a bed. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope all you guys and gals out there are having an incredible day. Got us a little hurricane on the way. So today is Monday. By the time this video airs on Friday, it should be barreling through here. So we're going to talk about a little bit of our preparations for that. Going to try and finish hooking up our drip system on our new raised bed plot behind me here. And then I want to answer a few questions that we've been getting in the comments about why we did things a certain way here. So as I'm sure most of you in the country, especially those of you on the Gulf Coast, are aware, we got Hurricane Ian moving through here pretty soon. Don't really know exactly what it's going to do yet, but it looks like the models are starting to agree a little bit. It's going to kind of go up the side of Florida along the west coast there, and it's going to come up through here. We're about 2 hours from the coast to 2.5 hours depending on where you go. So usually by the time they make it into us, they are weakened a little bit, and usually they're a tropical storm by that point. That doesn't mean we can't get a lot of rain and some pretty decent winds from them. So right now, and this could change, for our area they're projecting 20 to 30 mile an hour winds, some 40, 50 mile an hour wind gusts, anywhere from 3 to 5 inches of rain. We do need some rain. Don't quite need 5 inches of rain, but thankfully our soils drain pretty well. The wind is what I worry about. Those winds sustained can cause some problems. It is what it is out here in the garden. If we got plants that get blown over, we've got plants that get blown over. I don't really have a good way to shield them. We'll tighten up everything under the barn so nothing goes blowing around. As far as these raised beds here go, I do want to try and get soil in them in the next few days so that they're a little more secure. I don't know if they would blow around or not, but I'd feel a lot better if I had some soil in them. So we're going to try to get that done in the next few days, and we'll be sure to film that when we do it. I'm not really worried about my chicken tractor back there. That thing's pretty heavy, should be just fine. We used some pretty good screws when we put that thing together, and a lot of them. And if there's any good news to take from this hurricane being on the way, it's that we got a cool spell moving in here tomorrow, and that cooler weather warming some of that Gulf of Mexico water should calm it down a little bit, as opposed to if things were really hot right now, it just makes it intensify. So hopefully the cooler weather we get in the next few days will make it not as bad as it could be. So since I last showed y'all this new raised bed plot here, we have added these circular beds in this front row here, all 4 of them. Also got my tape measure out and made sure everything was as equidistant as I could get it, within a couple inches or so. Now it may not look even, just depending on what angle you look at it. Your eyes will kind of play tricks with you, but everything's lined up pretty dang good here. And most of the beds have settled in to being level. I may put a level on them late this afternoon just to check them all. This long skinny one here could use a little soil on the back end there just to get it leveled out, but most of them are sitting pretty close to level. So several videos ago, before we set the beds in this plot here, we made some trenches, run this mainline tubing in those trenches so it runs underneath the beds, and I showed you how we were doing one of these kind of vertical risers here with a mainline T there, have the pipe coming up inside the bed, just look a little neater there. So today what we need to do is we need to do this right here with this vertical tubing on all these beds out here, and then we need to run us a line from here all the way down there to connect all these drip lines so we have one contiguous system. So I've got my 1/2 inch or 5/8 mainline tubing here. This is what was left over from a 250-foot roll after doing what we've done so far in that plot. Got some fittings in the other day from Drip Depot, so we're ready to make it happen.
Unaware of where my heart would flow, I was waiting in the undertow.
All right. We got those risers in place there for all 13 of those beds. Now I know a lot of you are worried about me putting them on the inside of the beds like this and kind of boxing myself in, but I'm not worried about it. We'll talk about that a little more in a minute. And also for these circular beds here, I went ahead and decided to put a riser inside each one. Now we don't have to use it, and I'll show you how we can control that. But I think I'm also going to go between at least these two beds and maybe those two on the end there, and put me a vertical mist sprinkler in and have it set up so I can turn that mist sprinkler on if I want to, or I can water each bed individually with drip tubing or something like that. And then for these long beds here, we'll be using drip tape or drip tubing, and we'll just be running our rows the length of the bed there. So now that we got that riser at the top, we can convert that into drip tape or drip tubing, whatever we want to use to water what's in that bed. So for each bed, we've got the mainline tubing running vertically to the top of the bed. We'll then use an elbow to make a 90-degree turn with the mainline tubing, get it back on plane with the soil of the bed. And then one thing I think I'm going to add to each bed is a little valve here. So the valve will go right after the elbow, and then after the valve we can convert to drip tubing, drip tape, whatever we want to use for that bed. But the valve is going to be useful because then we can turn some beds on, we can turn some beds off. All these beds might not stay planted 365 days a year. So in the cases where we don't have anything in a bed, we're transitioning a bed, we can turn that individual bed off. That way we're not putting water where there's nothing there. And then once we get some soil in here in the next few days and hopefully get ready to plant after the hurricane, that's when we'll put our elbow and our valve on that vertical riser there, and then go to drip tape, drip tubing, whatever. Now one more thing we can do today to continue along with this drip setup is to connect these lines at the end of each row. Now I don't think I need to connect them on both sides, so we're going to connect them all right here with some T's and elbows, and then we'll just put stoppers on the end of the rows over there. So now we got a piece of main line running that way, and we just got to add our fittings to connect it all together. So on each corner here, we need to put an elbow in place. Cut that right there. And cut this piece right here. And then install our elbow right there. And right here, we need to use a T. Connect all this. Tighten that in. Tighten that down. Just like that. Now on this other end, there's really no need to connect all these lines here. We just need to cap them off. So we'll cut that about right there. And then we'll take one of these end caps right here. And we'll just put that on there. Screw it tight. And with these, you can screw off the ends and flush the system if you want to. And then on the last line here, I'm not going to install an end cap. It's kind of like an end cap. It's one of these automatic flush valves here. That way the system will flush. Won't get a lot of algal buildup in there from standing water and stuff. I use those on my fig tree orchard, and they work pretty dang good. So there's the automatic flush portion of it. This piece right here goes on our tubing. And we just screw it in place like that. There we go. And I saved all those scrap pieces there because we'll be able to use those at the top of each bed. And once these things are filled and we get ready to start actually using this drip system, I'll probably come in right here at this spot kind of in the middle, cut that line right there, install my filter and my pressure regulator so we can hook our water hose up right there, and then it'll feed all those beds. So definitely a little time investment and a little financial investment there to get that whole drip system set up, but I promise you it's going to be well worth it in the end. When we get all this stuff planted, we have all 13 of these beds going. All we got to do is hook a water hose up to that filter. We water all the beds at one time there. We can even set up a timer if we want to. That way we can do some timed watering. It's going to be really, really nice to have. And if you're wondering where to find all the individual pieces for a setup like this, we have a blog on our website showing all the pieces for my fig tree irrigation system. We also have a blog showing all the pieces for an in-ground irrigation system. I'll put links below to both of those if you're watching on YouTube. I'll also put links to the pieces we've used so far here. Once we get it all complete, I'll do another blog for our raised bed irrigation system. So now that we've got the backbone of our irrigation system in place and connected, we can start filling these things and hopefully get them filled before Ian comes around. So my buddy down the road that has the composted wood chips that he's given to me, that's why we're using them, is supposed to bring a load this afternoon. I don't know how many loads he's going to bring. May take a couple days for him to get it all here. I did the math, calculated the volume of all the beds combined, and it's about 20 cubic yards. I think he said his dump trailer will hold about 8 or so cubic yards. So, you know, 3 loads should do us. The tall ones on the back there, I'm going to get Brooklyn's uncle with his front end loader to fill those with the tractor because it's so much. But the other ones I should be able to fill pretty easily with a wheelbarrow and shovel. So now I want to take a few minutes and go through a few frequently asked questions that we've had about our setup here and why we're doing it this particular way. So number one, a lot of folks been asking, why are you using an existing garden plot for this? Why not just put it somewhere not in an established garden plot? Why are you using up one of your good plots for these raised beds here? Well, I kind of like to keep things symmetrical, and this dream garden is pretty symmetrical. And if I would have added another raised bed piece somewhere, kind of would have just looked out of shape a little bit. Also, although it may seem like I've got a lot of extra room here on this 2 acres, I got to keep room for me to pull in and out of that barn with my camper and stuff. So I don't have as much extra space as you might think. Most of our property, except the front yard, is taken up by garden, barn, and fig trees. Another reason I want to use this plot is because I know there's a low weed seed bank in that plot and hardly any grass in that plot. So I can set those beds just like we have them on top of that tilled soil. I'll be able to come in here with some wood chips, put those down, and I shouldn't have a lot of weed or grass issues because we've been working on our weed seed bank in this plot for several years through cover cropping, tarping, all that good stuff. So I wanted to use an established plot so that we don't have to fight grass and weeds as much. We also had a couple people asking why I gave myself 4 foot of space around the entire perimeter as opposed to putting the beds closer to the edge there. Why didn't I put them closer to the edge and maybe squeeze another row of beds in there? Well, another row of beds wasn't quite in the budget for this project here. We've already spent a good deal on this setup here, and when I drew this out, when I kind of mapped it out on paper, it just worked out having even spacing all the way around. I could have put the beds a little closer to the edge and gave myself more space between the beds, but I think the space I have between the beds now is going to be enough for a wheelbarrow, and that's really all I was looking to do. I wanted to have a little bit of wood chip space on the edges there. That way I've got room to walk along there with my edger and keep the edges clean. And then as far as why we're not doing the hugelkultur thing in the beds, I think I mentioned this several videos ago, but any excess wood or logs we have, I have stacked up underneath the barn there, and we usually take that camping with us. The firewood at some of these state parks and campgrounds can be kind of expensive, so we save money and take that wood with us camping. I really don't have a lot of extra limbs and stuff. We have 2 pecan trees on the property. That's really only 2 big trees. We get a few limbs falling from them from time to time, but not a lot. And I'm not going to make a point to go get a load of limbs or something to put in these beds when I'm getting those, you know, free composted wood chips that we're going to fill them with. And then the big one that a lot of people seem to be concerned about was this main line and these fittings being buried underneath those beds, and what happens if these things start leaking. They're going to be pretty hard to get to fix that leak. Now I know never say never, right? But I've been using this type of mainline and these fittings in my fig orchard for a while. I've been using them in my in-ground garden plots for a long time, and I've never had any issues with the mainline connected to these type of fittings leaking. Never. Now, you will get some leaking plugging in drip tape fittings into the main line. Those do tend to dribble a little bit, but I've never had any leaking issues with this connection here, whether it be an elbow, a valve, a T, whatever. Now, I could be wrong, and if I am, it won't be the first time and certainly won't be the last time, but I don't foresee having any issues with the main line and these fittings being buried underneath the beds. But if for some reason we did have an issue with those fittings leaking way at the bottom of these tall beds here, all I've got to do is come put an elbow in right there, another elbow right there, run that main line around the outside of the bed, and we can put another riser coming up the outside there. So plan B is not that bad. I don't think we're going to have to use plan B, but we have it if we need to. And then the last question, which is as valid as all the others, is why do you need such tall beds there? Plant roots are only going to go maybe 12 inches deep at the max, so why do you need all that soil for those plants to grow in? And that's a really good point. But I think these taller beds are going to be especially handy for things that can be a little bit of a booger to harvest. The first thing that comes to mind is spinach. So one of those tall beds is definitely going to be getting spinach planted in it. Spinach is low to the ground. You got to get way down there to harvest it. I think it's going to be really nice having spinach up there, you know, waist level. Be a lot easier to cut that way. So anything that stays kind of low to the ground where you have to bend down a long ways to harvest, that's probably what we're going to put in those taller beds at least this fall. We'll see how things evolve over the years and what all different stuff we plant in there, but it's going to be the low growing stuff initially. So hopefully that helped explain why we're doing things the way we're doing it here, and hopefully you enjoyed seeing that irrigation set up there. If you're in the path of Hurricane Ian, if you're going through that right now, our thoughts and prayers are with you. If you have electricity so you can actually watch this video right now, consider yourself fortunate, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who don't have power right now, but hopefully everybody will hang in there tight and it'll all get better soon. As I mentioned earlier, I'll put links to our irrigation blogs below, also links to the fittings that we used here. In this setup, you'll also find links to our Amazon store and all our other affiliate company links with some coupon codes as well. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to subscribe, hit that notification button, like, and share, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.
Oh, farewell. By the beauty of your life,